You're living the same day over and over again, as if reality itself has forgotten how to surprise you. You wake up with the same thoughts, face the same challenges, and no matter how hard you try to change things, you somehow end up right back where you started. What if I told you that this isn't happening to you by chance, but because you've unknowingly entered into a contract with a version of reality that keeps playing the same script on repeat? Here's what most people don't realize. The world you're experiencing right now isn't actually creating your circumstances. It's doing something far more profound and far more terrifying when you first understand it. Your reality is functioning as a perfect mirror, reflecting back to you the exact frequency of consciousness you're broadcasting from within. Every person who frustrates you, every obstacle that blocks your path, every limitation that keeps showing up in your life, they're not independent forces working against you. They're reflections, precise mathematical reflections of the internal state you've been occupying without even knowing it. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You decide you want something different. You set a goal, you make a plan, you take action. And yet somehow, despite all your effort, the same patterns keep emerging. The same type of relationships, the same financial situations, the same health issues, just wearing different masks. It's as if reality has a memory, and no matter what you do on the surface, it keeps pulling you back to a familiar baseline. This isn't coincidence, and it certainly isn't bad luck. What you're about to discover goes beyond anything you've been taught about manifestation, positive thinking, or the law of attraction. We're going to explore a state of consciousness that exists right now, within you, where reality doesn't just respond to your desires, it actively reorganizes itself to match the command signal you're transmitting. This is the mirror state, and understanding how to enter it changes everything about what's possible for your life. Most people spend their entire existence fighting with their reflection, and trying to rearrange the mirror instead of changing what's standing in front of it. They push against circumstances, argue with reality, and wonder why the world feels so resistant to their efforts. What they don't understand is that they're operating from the wrong end of causation. They're treating effects as if they're causes, shadows as if they're the source of light. Stay with me until the end, because what comes next reveals the precise mechanism that's been keeping you locked in the same reality, and more importantly, the exact entry point into a state of consciousness where your command becomes reality's instruction manual. Now, I want to go even deeper into what's actually happening behind the scenes of your daily experience, because this is where the real transformation begins. You've been taught to navigate reality using only one set of rules, the rules of the three-dimensional world. Solid objects that you can touch, linear time that moves from past to future, cause and effect, relationships that seem logical and predictable. Your entire education system, your entire understanding of how life works, has been built on this foundation. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. This three-dimensional framework isn't the whole picture. It's just one layer of a much more complex system. Beyond what your five senses can perceive, beyond what you can measure with clocks and rulers, there exists another dimension of reality entirely. This is where the mirror state operates, and in this space, the rules you've been playing by simply dissolve. Time doesn't flow in a straight line from yesterday to tomorrow. Instead, there's only an eternal now, a single point of consciousness that contains every possible version of your life that could ever exist. The version of you who made different decisions 5 years ago isn't lost in some inaccessible past. It exists right now, in this moment, as a complete and finished reality running parallel to the one you're currently experiencing. If you want to keep exploring these deeper truths about consciousness, subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to uncover together. Think of it like a cosmic library, but instead of books arranged on shelves, you have entire timelines, entire life stories, entire versions of yourself living out dramatically different realities. The version of you who took that risk you were too afraid to take, that person exists in full detail right now. The version who chose the other path at that critical junction in your life, who became someone you only dreamed about becoming, that reality is already complete, already waiting, already real. This isn't metaphor or philosophy. This is the actual architecture of how consciousness interacts with reality. What you think of as creating your future is actually something completely different. You're not building your life moment by moment like constructing a house brick by brick. What's really happening is that you're tuning into a specific frequency, and that frequency determines which pre-existing timeline you pull from the library and experience as your lived reality. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every decision you make is broadcasting a signal, and that signal acts like a radio dial selecting which station to play. The impact of understanding this journey from powerlessness to sovereignty cannot be overstated, because once you see how the system actually works, you realize you've been operating with only a fraction of your true creative capacity. Write in the comments, "I choose my timeline," if this is starting to click for you, because what comes next reveals exactly how this selection process works and why most people remain completely unconscious of the power they're wielding every single moment of every single day. The question you should be asking yourself right now is why this understanding isn't taught everywhere. Why isn't this the foundation of every education system, every conversation about personal development, every discussion about how to transform your circumstances? And the answer to that question reveals something uncomfortable about how society actually operates behind the scenes. This knowledge has been deliberately kept on the fringes, dismissed as mysticism, categorized as abstract philosophy that has no practical application. You've been trained from childhood to look everywhere, except within your own consciousness for answers. When something goes wrong, you're taught to find an external solution. A problem with your body? Take this pill. A problem with your finances? Follow this system. A problem with your relationships? Read this book, attend this seminar, hire this expert. But here's the revelation that changes the entire game. A person who discovers they are the sole creative power in their own reality becomes completely ungovernable. They stop consuming endless solutions to problems they now recognize they created themselves through unconscious patterns of thought and feeling. They stop seeking validation from external authorities. They stop waiting for permission to change. They stop believing they need anything outside themselves to transform their circumstances. This sovereignty, this radical self-reliance, is genuinely dangerous to any structure that requires you to feel small, dependent, and powerless. The entire economic system, the entire social framework, depends on you believing that change comes from outside, that you need their products, their programs, their approval before you can step into a different version of your existence. The real obstacle to transformation isn't lack of information or resources. The reason most people never break free from their repeating patterns is because they're living in a hypnotic trance and they don't even recognize it. Think about how you actually spend your mental energy each day. You wake up and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind is already racing through the same neural pathways it traveled yesterday. You're checking your problems like items on a mental inventory list. You're reviewing your limitations, mentally rehearsing all the reasons why things can't change, why you are the way you are, why your circumstances have to remain as they've been. Your attention is completely glued to the external world, to the mirror, and you spend all your energy trying to rearrange the reflection instead of changing what's standing in front of it. This is the trance. You're arguing with shadows, negotiating with reflections, treating the effects as if they're the source of your experience. Breaking free from this hypnosis isn't about positive thinking or forcing yourself to ignore what's happening around you. The real shift happens when you withdraw your attention from the problem and place it deliberately on the solution that already exists in the mirror state. Drop "I see the trance" in the comments if you're recognizing how deeply this pattern has been running your life, because what I'm about to reveal next is the precise mechanism that keeps you locked in and the exact doorway that leads out. The best way to understand how this actually works is to think of the mirror state as a vast film vault, a library containing every possible movie that could ever be made about your life. And I'm not talking about rough drafts or partial scenes. Each film strip in this vault is completely finished. Every single frame has already been recorded, from the opening scene where you wake up in the morning to the final credits rolling at the end of your story. These aren't possibilities waiting to be created. They're finished realities, complete in every detail, just waiting for your consciousness to select which one to play. What you experience as time passing, as moving from yesterday to today to tomorrow, is actually something much different than you've been taught to believe. Your consciousness is traveling along one of these film strips, illuminating one frame at a time as you go, creating the sensation of sequential movement through your life. But here's where it gets interesting. When you wake up tomorrow morning feeling the same way you felt today, thinking the same thoughts, holding the same assumptions about who you are and what's possible for you, you're literally loading up the same film you watched yesterday. The scenes might change slightly, new characters might appear, different situations might unfold, but the fundamental story remains identical because you haven't switched to a different reel. Hit the like button if this resonated with you. It helps more people discover these deeper truths. This is the hidden mechanism behind why trying harder within the same mindset never produces different results. You're just watching the same movie with more intensity, expecting it to somehow transform into a different story. But the vault doesn't work that way. Every decision you make right now, every thought you choose to entertain, every emotion you allow yourself to dwell in is functioning like a tuning mechanism. It's selecting which film strip your consciousness locks onto and experiences as reality. The impact of this understanding is profound because it means transformation isn't about working harder or waiting longer. It's about making a different selection. This selection process is happening constantly, every single second, through your consciousness. But here's the problem most people face on this journey. They're making this selection completely unconsciously. They default to yesterday's film because their internal dialogue hasn't changed. Their habitual way of thinking and feeling continues to broadcast the same signal, and that signal keeps pulling the same reel from the vault. The transformation happens the moment you realize you can consciously interrupt this automatic process. You can deliberately change your state of being right now, in this present moment. And by doing so, shift to an entirely different film strip that already contains the life you've been working so hard to create. Write "I'm selecting now" in the comments if this mechanism is starting to make sense, because what comes next reveals the precise tool that allows you to make this conscious selection instead of letting it happen on autopilot. Understanding this selection mechanism is one thing, but actually operating it requires you to recognize that you have two completely different ways of perceiving reality, and most people only know how to use one of them. Your natural focus is what you're using right now to process these words, to navigate the physical world around you, to analyze and calculate your way through daily decisions. This mode of perception is anchored in your five senses. It sees only what can be measured, touched, proven. It's trapped in linear time, convinced that yesterday caused today and today will cause tomorrow, that the external world is the source of your experience rather than the result of it. But you have another way of perceiving reality that's been massively undervalued and misunderstood. Your spiritual focus, what most people dismiss as mere imagination or daydreaming, is actually the workshop where reality is first assembled before it appears in physical form. This isn't fantasy or make-believe. Your imagination is the dimension where you access the realm of cause, and the place where you can perceive timelines that don't exist physically yet, where you can explore versions of yourself and your life that your five senses have never encountered. This is where the real transformation happens, where the journey from limitation to freedom actually begins. The hidden truth that most people miss entirely is this: desire alone doesn't move you from one timeline to another. Desire is important, but it's not the engine. Desire just shows you which film strip exists in the vault, which version of your life is waiting to be selected. The actual mechanism that pulls you from one reality into another, the force that literally transports your consciousness from the film you've been watching to a different one entirely, is something called assumption. And this isn't what you think it is. This isn't hope. It isn't wishing. It isn't positive thinking or trying to convince yourself that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. Assumption is a complete shift in your state of being right now, in this present moment. It's the act of occupying the reality where your goal is already accomplished, where the wish is already fulfilled, where the transformation has already occurred. You're not pretending. You're not faking it until you make it. You're mentally and emotionally stepping into that specific timeline and living from that state as if it's already your reality. When you sustain this inner state consistently, when you hold this assumption steady regardless of what your physical senses are showing you, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes. You begin to impress a new truth upon your subconscious mind. Your subconscious is the actual creative force operating beneath the surface of your awareness. It doesn't argue or question or demand proof. It simply accepts whatever you consistently impress upon it as true and then proceeds to objectify that truth in your physical experience. Drop assumption is the key in the comments if this is landing for you, because what I'm about to reveal next is the most challenging part of this entire process. The phase where most people abandon everything, right when they're on the verge of breakthrough. Once you've made this shift, once you've impressed a new assumption upon your subconscious and selected a different timeline from the vault, you enter what I consider the most challenging phase of this entire journey. You're now living in two worlds simultaneously, and this is where most people collapse right when they're on the edge of breakthrough. You're maintaining an inner world where your wish is already fulfilled, where the reality you've been seeking already exists as a lived experience. But simultaneously, you're navigating an outer world that hasn't caught up yet, that's still reflecting your old assumptions, your past decisions, your former state of being. This creates a tension that most people simply cannot sustain. Your physical senses will assault you with evidence that contradicts everything you've impressed upon your subconscious. The world will show you problems, obstacles, delays, circumstances that seem to directly deny the reality you're claiming in your imagination. And this is the critical moment where you need to understand something with absolute clarity. These external conditions are not the truth. They're shadows, echoes of your past assumptions playing out because there's a time lag between selecting a new timeline and watching it fully materialize in your three-dimensional experience. The vault has already released the new film, but the projector takes time to load it completely. Your task during this transition is remaining loyal to your new inner reality, persisting in the assumption you've made even when every external fact seems to deny it. This requires discipline that most people won't maintain because the physical world is incredibly convincing. It feels solid, it looks real, it demands your agreement. But the moment you let the external conditions talk you out of your assumption, the moment you abandon the new timeline because the old one is still visible, you reset the entire process. You load yesterday's film back into the projector and then wonder why nothing ever changes. The ultimate revelation that transforms everything once you truly absorb it is this: you are the mirror state itself. It's not something separate from you that you access like opening a door to another room. You are the consciousness that contains all possibilities, all timelines, all potential realities. The entire world you see around you, every person in it, every situation you encounter, every circumstance you're navigating, it's all you pushed out, objectified, made visible. You're not separate from reality, observing it from a distance. You are reality experiencing itself through this particular focal point of awareness. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is random. Everything is a perfect reflection of the state of consciousness you're occupying right now. Put "I am the mirror" in the comments if this revelation is landing for you, because what comes next brings everything we've covered together into a framework you can actually use to consciously navigate between timelines. If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. Most people scroll past content like this within the first 30 seconds because it challenges everything they've been conditioned to believe about reality, about their own power, about what's actually possible. But you stayed. You listened. You allowed these ideas to settle into your awareness. And that tells me something important about where you are on this journey. You're ready for something deeper than surface-level answers. The work we're doing here on this channel isn't about quick fixes or temporary motivation. It's about revealing the hidden mechanics of consciousness, the operational truths that most people never discover because they're too hypnotized by the three-dimensional world to look deeper. If that resonates with you, if you want to continue exploring these concepts and learning how to apply them in ways that actually create measurable transformation in your life, subscribe to the channel. This is just one piece of a much larger puzzle we're putting together. And I don't want you to miss what's coming next. If this message landed for you, if something shifted while you were watching, drop a comment saying, "This message was meant for me." There's something powerful about declaring your recognition of truth when you encounter it. It's a way of impressing it deeper into your own consciousness, making it more than just information you consumed, turning it into a decision you've made about who you're becoming. Hit the like button if you felt that connection we've built over these minutes together. It helps more people find their way to this content, people who are ready to wake up from the trance and step into their creative power. There's a video right here that takes what we've covered today even deeper into the practical mechanics of shifting between timelines. Click and continue with me over there, because the journey doesn't end here.